Interest rates were pretty much at zero in most places. They had to do something.
The economic crisis caused by the pandemic has dealt the biggest blow to the self-employed and to small businesses.
Yeah, well, try going through that and not cutting rates and seeing what it does to the global economy. It was already the worst recession in all recorded history.
I see a world where 8 billion people have a mobile device and they have a digital wallet.
The Federal Reserve announcing it's taking another step at looking at the possibility of issuing a central bank digital currency, saying it's going to issue a paper.
Bitcoin links together 8 billion people, links together 100 million companies. It synchronizes the world across political jurisdiction.
Interest rates were pretty much at zero in most places. They had to do something because the whole world had shut down. So given the same choice, I think all of us would have done the same thing. I know there's a bunch of people on Twitter who say, the Fed, they should never cut rates. Yeah, well, try going through that and not cutting rates and seeing what it does to the global economy. It was already the worst recession in all recorded history. So, no, it is what it is. And we're not talking about the dollar, like dollar versus the rand. We're talking the dollar as a currency, or even all fiat currencies, because we're seeing it because Europe's doing the same thing, Australia, the UK. So it's that fall in the purchasing power of fiat currency. So the idea is, how do you manage all of this without it blowing everything apart? So we've seen this, is we should have had, in that recession, everything should have fallen apart. Markets went down for a month and then went up like a rocket ship because they devalued the value of money. So they've kind of got this mechanism. And what they figured out also is they can do direct transfer payments to people. So the government and monetary and fiscal policy have now combined. So it's a big thing. So how do they get out of this whole mess? Well, they kind of have to keep going. They hope that they can get enough inflation over 20 years to erode it away. And that's about it, really. I mean, they don't really have a choice. And also what people can't get their heads around is this rise in asset prices means that you could buy a smaller house than you could have done a year ago because the value's gone up. And what are savings and investments? Future consumption. So somebody's robbed you of future consumption when you retire and you sell that house or that investment. And people don't understand why rising asset prices and the way that it's happening isn't a good thing. It's because everybody who's young is getting screwed here because everything's become more expensive to have an investment. Basically, the financial system is kind of overcomplicated because of the regulations after 2008. So banks are very specific in what they're allowed to do with certain things, where their share price is, what their balance sheet's doing, what's happening. And so you can give them money, but they actually can't use it. And it's kind of weird. And the Fed created it to try and create buffers, but it also means that monetary policy doesn't work. In Europe, it's even worse. The banks are completely broken. And they're so hamstrung by all of this regulation, which is why they gave money directly, essentially, to the government, who gave it directly to individuals, because you need to bypass the banking system. That's what central bank digital currency is all about. It's bypassing the banking system because none of it functions. If you went through the biggest economic crisis in all history with a massively levered system and it didn't fall apart, okay, what is the end game? What more do you want? Thermonuclear war? So even I was very surprised at the economy was terrible, but what it did for markets and stuff. And we need to separate economies and markets. So yeah, I just don't think that probability is there. Devaluing the value of the dollar and magic, assets go up, everything's fine. And nobody gets the joke is the fact that everybody's actually getting poorer because of it, except the few who have all the assets already, which is why crypto is so interesting, right? I've always said this, once it starts getting over 10 trillion, governments really care. Are they going to stop it? Can they ban it at that point? No. But they care because it becomes a global asset class that matters. But don't forget, the equity market's like 200 trillion, the bond market's like 250 trillion. So this is noise still. And I know everyone thinks like Bitcoin, you know, it's going to take over the world, but it's still minuscule. You know, it's $1 trillion and it's nothing. So, yeah, he's right. People will care about it. If it does it too quickly, the governments will care about it. But if it goes up over time, they're fine with it. I mean, it's not like they care about gold. I know people say, oh, they're conspiring to keep down the price of gold. I don't believe that at all. But they've existed alongside gold forever, and it offers the same kind of, you know, way of getting out of the financial system. So I don't really think it's as big a deal, particularly if the financial system builds on it all.
I think for a decade, conventional treasury strategy was I buy short-dated treasuries, and in order to get my stock up, I buy back my equity and leverage up my cash flows. I watched 99 out of 100 of my competitors all go out of business pursuing that strategy. What they do is they either do a dilutive acquisition where they buy another company and they keep bolting on acquisitions until they got 37 companies and it all falls apart, and then they sell themselves or take themselves private, or they keep buying their stock back and leveraging up. And one way is decapitalizing the company, the other way is diluting the company. What I was doing with Bitcoin was I was saying, I don't want to decapitalize the company. I want to keep the capital or grow the capital, but I want to put an asset on the balance sheet. And I think a big breakthrough is I can convert my cash from a liability to an asset, and then we realize that if that asset's going to go up by more than 10% a year, and you can borrow money at 5% or 4 or 3 or 2, then you should pretty much borrow as much money as you can and flip it into the asset, and why wouldn't you?
Oh, right, but it does kind of call time on this ultra-low interest rate policies by the central banks that seem to be there only to benefit a few select at the top while disenfranchising the many. And if all corporations did what you guys are doing, it would seem to disrupt the central banks, which in fact would then help Bitcoin. Is there a virtuous cycle here? Should central banks take a more politicized stance and do this for that reason as a way to get rid of possibly the greatest threat we have, and that is the central banks? And I'm tacitly having you agree with this thought, quite unfairly, with this question. However, I think you see what I'm driving at. Is there a political angle to this at all? Are you allowed to say that?
I think we can all